Hey, how you doing? This is Harpsy. Thank you for tuning in to my channel. Today I'll be doing a tutorial on how I sidechain in flstudio. And I'll be showing you a few ways of how to achieve the same or similar result. Let's take a look. In this example, I have a bass line here and a kick for simplicity. Nice. So if I turn the kick off, I have these two basses being routed to one bus, and how I did that is just you highlight whatever you'd like to route and then control click the output. So in this case, let me just do that again. Select both, control click. Now both of them are routed here. All right. And what you want to pull out is a fruity limiter. Then you have your source that you want to sidechain your bass with. In this case, it's the kick, and I have that routed to this bus as well, but the volume is turned all the way down, and I have another signal going to the master output. Now what this does is it allows you to select a source in your fruity limiter that you'd like to use as your sidechain. And the way you do that is you go to the compressor section of this plugin and you select your kick. And by the way, you'll see all the sources that are being routed to this channel, bus channel. I'm going to use that in the same way here in this example. So in this channel, I have the limiter, and everything that's going to this limiter is available for you to select, but I want to use the kick as my sidechain. So once that's selected, and we listen to and we bring down the threshold, and bring up the ratio, which all we're doing is we're just mimicking compression here. Where do you want to set your threshold? How much do you want to compress your signal? In sidechain world, that's how low do you want the sidechain to go? Do you want it all the way at 0? Or do you want to kind of leave some volume there from the bass and then not compress it so much? And you have your release time here. So these are going to be your main knobs that you'll be using for your sidechain compression through the limiter. Let's take a listen. Let me turn the kick on. Let's take a listen here. There you go. Now you see it pumping. You can actually see it pumping visually. The purple is what's being pumped out of the signal, and you can see the white ramp is the kick signal doing the side chaining. If I bring down the release, there's going to be a quicker release, but as you can tell, there is mud building up in the signal here. So best practice is if you want a shorter sidechain, you have to use a shorter source. So what we could do here is, for example, let's grab a hi-hat. I'll route it to this bus again as a sidechain source, bring down the volume so now you won't hear the hi-hat. And let's take the kick off of the bus because now we want to use the hi-hat. Select the hi-hat. And now you have a shorter sidechain compression going on here, which is nice if you want to be a little bit more quicker with your side chaining. And at the same time, you could extend the release, which is nice. Unlike the kick, you can't shorten the release too much. But here on the hi-hat, you can have a very short release, and you could have a very long release for a larger pumping effect. And if I turn off everything but the sidechain, you'll see what's happening here. You see that? Speed it up a little bit. There you go. You can see the pumping that it's doing. Okay, so that's the first way of sidechaining, using a source of audio and compressing it and ducking the signal that way. Now, another way is using volume automation. So let's turn this off for now. And what I see a lot of people do, and there is no wrong way, by the way, it's very subjective on how you want to sidechain. I'm just showing you ways that you can sidechain. So use whatever way you'd like, really, here. But the next way I see people do it, and I've done this before too, but it ends up with some negative sides here. Negative side being, if I automate the volume, which is what I'm going to be doing, right? To create the sidechain effect, let's create an automation clip. Boom. Let's make it nice and short to fill. Have it fit the kick here. Create a curve for the kick. Right? Maybe like that. You can just duplicate this volume automation, which is, for me, kind of a downside because you have to draw this in every time. But let's take a listen and see what's going on here. So now you see that the actual volume is being brought down with the fader. What happens though is if you pause it, you see how it gets stuck wherever you pause your project, and here it's restarting, so it's at the very bottom of the automation. And now you lost your fader if you want to drop the volume of this channel, which is a huge negative for me. And personally, I never use this method. So instead, to avoid that, let's remove the automation. None. And instead, let's open up a Fruity Balance, which is just a gain control and I think panning. Yeah, and a panning control. And now you could automate the volume on the Fruity Balance. Since I've already created the automation clip, I'm just going to link it, which was bass volume. Boom. Now we have this automation running, and watch what it's doing to the Fruity Balance. There you go. It's bringing the volume down in the balance plugin. And I could still bring down my fader now, which is nice for mixing. So that is the second way of achieving sidechain. Now, I can't find much negatives for this way of sidechaining, except that you do have to have an automation clip running under every single kick that you have. So there's a small workaround for doing this, and that's by using a MIDI track instead of a automation track. So let's just do that. MIDI sidechain. Boom. Throw that in there, and now we're gonna use the automation as an instrument, essentially, and we're going to create a MIDI sequence for it. Again, 4 on the floor. You no longer need this on the grid. What is this called? On the playlist. So you can mute this, but it will still be using this automation as the source of the sidechain here. So I'll explain that a little bit better visually if that's hard to understand there. So if I play this, so let's take a look. See, it's pumping. The cool thing about this is if you're not big on using audio, you could just transfer these kicks to MIDI. So let's mute this kick. And what is this kick called here? Zen FY kick. All right. So now you have everything in one pattern. Zen. So here we go. It's following the MIDI. That's the coolest part, is you could draw the MIDI the way you want your kicks and your sidechain to happen. And that's this way I could add as many kicks as I'd like. And another great thing about this, unlike sidechain compression, not volume, is if I delete these kicks, the automation will still play without the kick. It'll still pump without the kick being present, which is nice in case you want to use that as a producing technique. So I really like that way. One of the ways that I typically sidechain is like that. I don't really use too much audio in my projects, like audio files, like as far as drums go. I usually like writing my drums in MIDI, but that's another technique. So these are the FL Studio ways of sidechaining. Now, if you don't mind spending a little money, I like to sidechain with the plugin ShaperBox. So if you have a budget for plugins, it's $89. Probably, it's definitely worth the price, because you do have multiple functionalities from this plugin, not just sidechaining. But what I like about using ShaperBox for my sidechain is you could select the volume as your, what do they call them here? Shapers, as your shaper. So you have different ones: time, drive, filter, crush, pan width, volume automation. And it gives you these little presets that you could work with. Right, so let's select that, and now we select our time. I believe it's called quarter notes, 1/4. Right, and now we have the ShaperBox doing the automation for us. Now, the reason I like this method for sidechaining is because it gives you a nice little view of your sidechain, and you can get very meticulous with the automation. And keep in mind, you could do the same thing here. You just have to zoom in really closely, and you could get creative as well with the fruity balance. But the ShaperBox makes it easier in a sense where I don't have to have any automation for the actual shape of the sidechain. I could just have this playing, and it's going to sequence to the track. I could even speed it up into 1/8 notes. Right. 1 bar. Let's see. That's what makes it easier to use ShaperBox. Additionally, you could quickly do things like reverse sidechain, right? If you want to, instead of sidechain, you actually want to like create like this like stutter sound. Right? Which is really a topic for another video, but if you think about it, sidechaining is just the opposite of creating the stutter, right? Instead of it ramping down, it ramps up, and you have your shape, which is following the kick or whatever it may be. But kick is usually the main thing I find myself sidechaining, because you want to clean out that muddiness out of the bass and the kick clashing together. This sidechaining helps you achieve that goal. And also, if you're just looking for a crazy way of pumping your music, sidechaining is the way to do that. And there you have it. Those are a couple of ways. What is that? 2 ways in FL Studio using the stock plugins, and then you have one VST that I use. This is probably the only other VST. This is the only T I use for sidechaining. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. It helps the channel, helps my growth. Appreciate you all. Have a great day.